Last week in Barcelona, the most anticipated car of the new F1 era finally touched the track. The Aston Martin AMR26, the very first machine personally designed by legendary mastermind Adrian Newey, completed its long-awaited shakedown, instantly becoming the centre of attention across the paddock. While lap times told very little of the real story, the visuals alone were enough to send shockwaves through Formula One. Strange aerodynamic horns, a brutally wide nose, extreme sidepods, and a floor concept that looks ripped straight out of F1's wildest engineering experiments. This was not a conservative debut. And when Fernando Alonso stepped out of the cockpit, he didn't just praise the car, he described Adrian Newey as a teacher, already transforming Aston Martin from the inside. If you want to understand why this AMR26 could become the most revolutionary F1 car of 2026, make sure you subscribe now, because what's happening behind the scenes at Aston Martin could change the balance of power in Formula One forever. The Aston Martin AMR26 finally emerged from behind closed factory doors during the Barcelona shakedown, and from the very first images, it was clear this car was never designed to blend in. This wasn't a cautious first step into the 2026 regulation era. This was Adrian Newey making a statement. For Aston Martin, the AMR26 is more than a new car. It is a declaration of intent, a technical manifesto, and potentially the most radical interpretation of the 2026 rules we've seen so far. Although Fernando Alonso finished the test with only the fastest time, more than 4 seconds adrift of Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari, nobody inside the paddock believes that lap was representative. Aston Martin were clearly not interested in lap times. The run plan was short, controlled, and deliberately conservative. The real priority was correlation, understanding whether the most aggressive design philosophy on the grid behaves as predicted once exposed to real airflow, real tyres, and real track conditions. And that philosophy begins with the feature everyone noticed immediately: the aerodynamic horns mounted beside the roll hoop. To casual observers, they might appear almost decorative, but in reality, they are pure Adrian Newey. This is not a new idea pulled from nowhere. Newey first introduced a similar solution with the McLaren MP420 in 2005, a car still regarded as one of the most aerodynamically efficient machines ever built. Back then, Newey explained that the horns were designed to manipulate the airflow approaching the rear wing, effectively increasing downforce without breaching strict dimensional regulations. In 2026, that concept becomes even more powerful, with the new regulations heavily limiting wing performance and focusing on cleaner airflow to reduce dirty air. Controlling how air reaches the rear wing could be just as important as the wing itself. The horns on the AMR26 are almost certainly shaping, stabilizing, and accelerating airflow that would otherwise be chaotic after passing the halo and engine cover. If Newey has succeeded, Aston Martin may have found a way to generate consistent rear stability across a wide speed range, a priceless advantage under the new rules. But the horns are only the headline act. The AMR26's wide nose immediately stood out when compared to rival cars, and it evokes memories of Red Bull's dominant era from 2010 to 2013. That philosophy was built around controlling airflow from the very front of the car, ensuring the entire aerodynamic platform remained predictable. A wide nose allows more deliberate airflow management across the chassis, feeding both the floor and side pods with greater consistency. This matters because in ground effect Formula One, stability is everything. A car that maintains aerodynamic balance through corners, bumps, and braking zones can be pushed harder. And Newey's designs have always prioritized that principle. Then there are the side pods. Aston Martin's solution is extreme, almost confrontational. The design instantly reminded observers of Mercedes' zero-pod shock reveal in 2022, not because it copies the idea, but because it dares to challenge conventional thinking. The AMR26 features an enormous undercut, creating a cavernous gap between the sidepod and the floor. This gap is not accidental. By accelerating airflow through this channel, Aston Martin are likely attempting to maximize ground effect downforce while keeping the upper bodywork slim and efficient. It's a concept that echoes experimental designs from F1 history, including Ferrari's 1992 double-floor concept and Toro Rosso's aggressive undercut approach in 2011. Those ideas were risky then, and they're risky now. But history tells us that Newey thrives in exactly this space, the grey area between regulation wording and aerodynamic opportunity. The AMR26 looks like a car designed not just for peak performance, but for adaptability, a platform that can evolve rapidly once teams understand where the true limits of the 2026 rules lie. Even the rear wing pillars hint at Newey's long memory. Observers noted similarities to McLaren's 2009 design, years after Newey had already left the team. This has fueled speculation that some ideas don't disappear, they simply wait. It's entirely plausible that sketches from decades ago have finally found the regulatory environment where they make sense. In that context, the AMR26 doesn't feel like a single design moment. It feels like the culmination of a lifetime of aerodynamic thinking. And perhaps the most important element of all isn't visible on the car. Fernando Alonso's reaction tells a deeper story. He described Newey not just as a designer, but as a teacher, someone whose presence instantly raises standards across the team. Mechanics watch him. Engineers listen carefully. Every detail matters more because Newey is watching. This cultural shift could be Aston Martin's biggest advantage. For the first time in his career, Adrian Newey holds the dual role of team principal and managing technical partner. That means there is no disconnect between leadership vision and technical execution. Every department now aligns around a single philosophy, Newey's philosophy. Add to that Honda's return as a works engine partner and Aramco's financial backing, and Aston Martin suddenly looks less like a long-term project and more like a team positioning itself for sustained success. The AMR26 may not be fast yet, but speed can be found. What's harder to find is a coherent, aggressive, future-proof concept. And right now, Aston Martin might have exactly that. So the big question now is this: has Adrian Newey just cracked the 2026 regulations before anyone else? Or is the AMR26 a bold gamble that could either redefine Formula One or spectacularly backfire? Let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss other interesting news from us, because the biggest twists in Formula One are only just getting started.